Today I have a special video for you. I've been waiting a long time to do this one. We're gonna see how Shuckle does in a solo challenge of Pokemon Crystal. If you don't already know, this is one of the weird, sort of gimmicky Pokemon. It is essentially supposed to be exclusively defensive. Its base stats prove this. 20 HP, 5 speed, 10 attack and special attack, and 230 defense and special defense. One thing that surprised me about Shuckle when I sat down to run it was the fact that it has a medium slow growth rate, which is really good because the early game is going to be awful considering my starting set. Constrict and Withdraw. Then through level up, I get Wrap at level 9, Encore at level 14, Safeguard at level 23, Bide at 28, and Rest, one of my favorite moves, at level 37. Shuckle is a bug rock type, which is sad. This feels like a Generation 1 level up learn set, no same type attack bonus moves. And it will never learn any bug type moves unless I configure hidden power specifically to give it more same type options. That said, through TM and HM it actually gets access to some good moves. Headbutt, Curse, Rollout for same type attack bonus, Earthquake, Return, Dig, Mud Slap, so Gligar can be sad once again, Sludge Bomb, Sandstorm, Defense Curl, Attract, and Flash, which when you're using a Pokemon this bad and there are so few early game options, maybe this HM could have some kind of niche use. In the early game, the rival is going to be picking Cyndaquil. This is specifically because I'm a bug type. I figured Game Freak would have put it up against the fire type starter, although Totodile will actually do more damage, so for my second playthrough, I'm going to play against it. I made a little mistake because I still don't know the type chart after 5 years of doing this, so please forgive me in this first run. These are the rules for the solo challenge. They're in the description in case you want to reference them later. Now let's get to talking about Shuckle. I battled the rival here as fast as I could without defeating wild Pokemon. This might seem strange. Don't you want to level up as fast as possible to gain damage because Constrict is just completely intolerable to use at level 5? Well, that's not entirely true. In the early game of Pokemon Crystal, there are 2 mandatory heals. After you talk to Mr. Pokemon in his house, you will get healed when the screen fades to black. This would restore all of my PP, and I want to deplete Shuckle as soon as I can so that I can use Struggle instead of Constrict. The second mandatory heal comes after this battle. You can see that reflected here on the overlay. Cyndaquil faints, then the battle fades to white and back into the overworld, and notice my PP in the top left is fully restored. This happens because you can actually lose this fight and still proceed with the playthrough. The game just heals your Pokemon and then you can continue on. Now that 2 of the early game mandatory heals are done, there is still one more and I'll talk about it later on. I can go to the task of depleting all of Constrict and Withdraw's PP so that I get access to Struggle, which in Generation 2 has a base power of 50 and it deals typeless damage. Kind of. There is one scenario where its damage isn't purely considered typeless. As you can see here against this level 3 Pidgey, it's not going to allow me to get rid of all of Withdraw and Constrict's PP in a single battle. Fighting Pidgey and Sentret along Route 29 doesn't make as much sense as going to Route 30 and battling Pokemon here. The Caterpie know both Tackle and String Shot, so they can waste more time not dealing damage to Shuckle. Before I get there though, I want to stop by the mart and buy as many potions as is possible. I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to purchase enough of these to get all the way to Ilex Forest and get the Headbutt TM so that I can then use it for primary damage over Struggle. I find myself a Caterpie and I'm able to spam out most of my moves. I will just mention here that there is a 5% chance that you encounter a Hoppip in Crystal on both Route 29 and Route 30. The upside of Caterpie makes Route 30 slightly better for training in general with Shuckle because I can speed up my progress whenever I find one of these bugs. But Hoppip would be the superior encounter to find. But I don't think wasting time running away from Caterpie makes any sense when battles can go this well. With Struggle, my Shuckle is doing much better damage. In Pokemon, the damage calculation has a bunch of math floors. As a result, values after decimal points get truncated off before further steps in the calculation. This manifests itself as damage rounding thresholds, which I talk about so much on this channel. They are much more important for damage at low levels. So for Shuckle, I was planning around this and I wanted to go over the threshold at level 8 before fighting any trainers. I fight some more wild Pokemon like this Pidgey, level up to 8, and then I start taking on trainers. I am going to battle everyone, and for the remainder of the run, until I let you know, I am going to continue doing this, because Shuckle's one of those Pokemon that seems just so bad that I'm probably going to need something like level 100 at the very end of this challenge. At least, that's what I thought when I sat down to do this run. But then I did a little bit of digging. While Madrybred was level 100 to beat Red at the very end of the game, both J-Rose and Squidgy did not need level 100. So for this first run, I'm going to try to be as conservative as I can be on my training. But in the early game, I am going to be battling everyone. At level 9, I get access to Wrap. This move is worse than Struggle, so I'm just going to deplete its PP as soon as I can to get back to the move of last resort. The one trainer on Route 31 is Bugcatcher Wade, and normally I don't battle him, but today I want as much experience as is possible in the early game. Thing is, he potentially could be a problem for my level 10 Shuckle. The reason is he has 4 Pokemon. That means I'm going to take a decent amount of recoil damage, and even though I'm only taking 1 damage per hit from his Pokemon, he does have a single Weedle, and it has the move Poison Sting. If it inflicts the status condition, Shuckle potentially will lose because the damage the status condition deals is far greater than any regular move against my ridiculously defensive Pokemon. Like, look at Shuckle's defense and special defense stats. They are 54 right now at level 10. Luckily for me, the Weedle does not inflict poison, and using Struggle, I am able to 2-shot, so it only attacks me twice. I collect the rest of the experience from this battle, and then I head into Violet City. Inside the Pokemon Mart, you would expect that I could buy at least 1 more potion now after defeating 4 trainers, but no, the Johtonian trainers give bad experience and bad cash, so I cannot afford another potion yet. I pass through Violet City over to Route 36, and here I pick up the Hard Stone. This will be useful later on when I get access to Rollout. Next I head to Sprout Tower. Even though the Bellsprout deal neutral damage with Vine Whip, they're still only doing 1 hit point of damage per turn, so I don't need to worry about them. I want to just collect this experience. The reason I'm doing this training is because the rival in Azalea Town is usually quite scary. Also, Bugsy could be scary because of Fury Cutter's increasing power on every turn. And Falkner might be the most scary of all of these trainers because he's going to be using Mud Slap. I always love it when my accuracy gets lowered. Anyway, at the top of Sprout Tower, I'm fighting this Sage, and then I level up to 14 where Shuckle learns Encore. This is unfortunate because now I have to spam out 5 more PP before I get back to Struggle. It allows Shuckle to take more damage, and by far this is the closest battle yet in the playthrough. Shuckle comes through at the end with only 4 hit points remaining. I finish off the Elder at the top of the tower, and then I backtrack to the Mart to buy some potions. Now I can afford 4 more. This allows me to continue into the gym to face Birdkeeper Abe without having to go back to the Pokemon Center and heal. Okay, his Spearow is always going to spam Peck. I was a bit worried about this move because it does neutral damage, but I shouldn't have been. Shuckle's Rock type in combination with its outrageous defense stats means I take almost no damage, only 2 per hit, which I guess is more than 1, but still Shuckle pulls through this battle very easily. Okay, now it's time to take on Falkner. Okay, Mud Slap is the problem in this fight, and Struggle does not bypass accuracy checks. So because of that, as my accuracy gets lowered more and more, it is more likely for the Pidgey to continue spamming Mud Slap and progressively lower my accuracy. It gets all the way to -6 before I knock out his level 7 lead. Next is Pidgeotto. It has Gust, which is neutrally effective, but with the same type attack bonus, it's dealing okay damage, 2 per hit. I have a berry, so Shuckle can last here for a long time against his ace. The problem is, I'm just not hitting enough struggles, and as a result, I take my first reset here. Blacking out doesn't make any sense, because then I would have to spam out all of my PP again, which would be a multi-minute endeavor. Coming back into the fight, I can just hope that I get through the Pidgey a little bit quicker, because as we have already seen, the Pidgeotto prioritizes Gust over Mud Slap since the flying type move does more damage to Shuckle. This time I'm luckier with Pidgey, I only have my accuracy lowered to -4. Because of that, when the Pidgeotto comes out, I am hitting way more struggles. I have a 43% chance on every turn. Things still get pretty close. Pidgeotto takes me into orange health, I have it in orange health as well, and then I land a lucky critical hit, knocking out his ace, taking the win for Shuckle. This one gives me a 12.5% boost to my attack stat, which does raise Shuckle's attack by 1 point. That's nice. I will take everything that I can get with this Pokemon. Okay, let's talk about Mudslap, the TM that Falkner gives me. I could teach this to Shuckle right now. I don't think that that's the right choice though. Using Struggle is still going to be better over the next section of the game. So I think the fastest way to play here is holding off on teaching Mudslap. On the next route of the game, I continue my training spree, fighting pretty much every trainer except the guy who has 2 Poliwag. I want to skip any water type users if I can. Except this Goldeen on Ralph's team. It has Peck, which again is just not a move that I need to worry about. And that brings me to Shuckle's type chart. I was actually really surprised looking at it. It takes neutral damage from almost every type. It only resists normal and poison moves, and it's weak to rock, steel, and water type moves. There are some rock type Pokemon inside of Union Cave, but they don't have any rock type moves, so I figured battling them for experience made sense. Although I forgot to heal for Hiker Daniel's Onix. Because it has Bind, which deals percentage damage every turn, I end up losing here. I take a reset so that I can continue using Struggle, I heal with potions, and then Daniel's easy to defeat for experience. Inside the cave, I'm going to pick up as many items as I can so that I can sell them to have more potions. There's a Great Ball, a potion, the TM for Swift, and an X defend. Selling all of these, but keeping the Mudslap TM, at least for now, I am able to get 2,000 Pokédollars and buy 6 more potions, continuing Shuckle's struggle spree inside of Slowpoke well. I was a little bit worried about some of the trainers here, like this Rocket with Coughing, because he could potentially poison Shuckle. Luckily he doesn't, so I make it through this section of the game without any issues. But now we have a problem, because Kurt is one of the game's forced mandatory heals. In this case, I have all of my PP replenished. I now have 20 uses of Wrap, 40 uses of Withdraw, 35 uses of Constrict, and 5 uses of Encore. I start trying to deplete the PP at 26 minutes and 19 seconds. I want to show you just how long this takes, and I even find a Hoppip in this patch of grass fairly quickly, so I don't have to go in and out of battles a lot. Eventually though, the Hoppip is going to expire because it'll run out of all its moves and then use Struggle against Shuckle, so I have to complete depleting my PP on other Pokemon. I get back to Struggle at 29 minutes and 31 seconds. This is the reason it doesn't really make sense to go between Struggle strategies and then regular strategies. The alternation just takes way too much time, and that fact is going to be relevant for the trainer that's next, Bugsy. For this fight, I'm running a Berry, Struggle, and I'm level 21. This allows me to take out the Metapod fairly quickly, but it doesn't put Shuckle in a good position for the following Kakuna because it does have Poison Sting. If Shuckle gets afflicted by the status condition, I am pretty sure this battle is over. Although, I make it through his second Cocoon without it in the first attempt. Scyther's next. It's going for Fury Cutter, which initially isn't doing very much damage. However, the problem is that Struggle also isn't. I'm not going to be able to take down Bugsy's ace fast enough unless it misses once, and in this case it doesn't. Once again, just like Falkner, it doesn't make any sense to Blackout here to gain more experience from the Metapod and the Kakuna. If I did that, then I would have to beat Bugsy using Wrap and Constrict, and I don't think that's the correct strategy, because then I would have to fight the rival with those same moves or spam out all of my PP once again. In my second attempt against him, the Kakuna poisons me, so I reset right away, not wanting to move on to the Scyther. And then it happens again in the third fight, so I decided to see if I could knock out the Scyther, and the answer is definitely not. This isn't going to work. Now I could use the Poison Cure Berry to get around the status condition, but then I won't have enough health to survive the Scyther. So let's try an alternative approach. I am going to heal and try to use Wrap and Constrict. And yeah, this just doesn't work, by the way. It takes so long to knock out even just the Metapod. And then the Kakuna is nightmarish because it has more chances to use Poison Sting. So what are my options? Well, I can go back and I can fight other trainers. There are people that I skipped, like this guy over on the left-hand side of the gym, or Hiker Anthony. I specifically dodged him because he has a Rock-type move on his Geodude, but now at level 21, Shuckle can defeat him, although the fight gets pretty close. I only have 7 hit points remaining at the end. I still have a decent number of potions, so I can continue my training. Doing this with Struggle is fairly quick. I could level all the way up to 28, get access to Bide, and then use this to absolutely crush Bugsy's Scyther, but I don't think this is the fastest way. If I level up a little bit more, I'll go over level 23, and that'll still give me another damage rounding threshold, improving the output of Shuckle. That said, there's also a downside to this because then I can learn Safeguard, and I do think this move will be useful later into the playthrough, but it causes a time loss right now because I have to spam out all of its additional PP before I can go back and use Struggle against Bugsy. The time that I want to allocate towards training to level 23, I spend in a way that gets me all the way back to the first route of the game. This is so I can pick up the pink bow. You're going to think this makes no sense because Struggle deals typeless damage, but the pink bow increases the damage Struggle deals in Generation 2 because Struggle is defined as a normal type move. So while Struggle does bypass type effectiveness when calculating things like the same type attack bonus or not very effective or super effective damage, it does not skip typing when considering the held item you have. Although since the pink bow only increases damage by 10%, Shuckle does need to deal 10 damage in order to get over the threshold where it will deal 1 more damage per hit. There is no other held item that's useful right now while doing training, so I'll just hold the pink bow, at least for now. During the training, I fight the guy who had Poliwags, and yeah, he's terrifying. Water type moves are really the thing to be feared in this run. Shuckle gets taken all the way down to 4 hit points before I finally defeat him. Here, I learn Safeguard in the place of Constrict because I'm never going to want to use that move, and then I have to find myself another Hop Hip, spam out all of this PP before I make it back to Bugsy. Here's the thing about this fight. I don't really think the pink bow is helping me. Every time I make it to the Scyther, I just have too little health. I attempted 5 more times and all of them result in losses, so maybe I can battle the rival for experience instead. His Ghastly is extremely annoying at the beginning of the fight because it outspeeds Shuckle and is able to put me to sleep using Hypnosis. It also could potentially paralyze using Lick. Luckily, that's not going to be possible if I set up Safeguard first. I actually saved 1 PP of this move to try and play around Bugsy's poison, and now it's useful here for the rival. Quilava's next. While it can't do as much damage as Croconaw would with Water Gun, it could still burn me with Ember, and the fire type move is doing okay damage. Still though, I beat it on my first attempt. So Zubat's next. I thought I was going to win, but then Bite flinches me too many times, and as a result I take a loss. I had to come back, I get paralyzed right away, so I just reset. Then on my third attempt against the rival, I do get burned by the Quilava, so I take another loss. Like many Pokemon before it, mostly first stage Pokemon, Shuckle is essentially stuck. Both the rival and Bugsy are brutal. I'm starting to run short on potions, there's no way for me to earn more money, so if I want to train to 28 for Bide, I'm probably going to have to do it using Wrap, which makes me a little bit sad that I dropped Constrict of all things to get access to Safeguard. I probably should have dropped Withdraw or Encore. I do some additional training, but it's taking way too long, and that's when I figured out what the real strategy here needs to be. I just have to luck through Bugsy. In the past, I've done a bunch of comparisons about the time it takes to train in Azalea Town on wild Pokemon. It is just never more efficient than beating the trainers here with luck. Now, there are a couple of ways that I could do that. Against the rival, I could potentially run a move like Flash, Mud Slap, and Wrap to take him out, but I don't want to have to deal with Flash being on my moveset all the way until I get to Blackthorn City after the 7th gym leader. I think the more wise way to do this is just fight Bugsy until Fury Cutter misses. Once this happens, I should be able to knock out the Scyther, and surprisingly this happens very quickly. I only lose 1 more time, then Fury Cutter misses. With only 1 miss, I'm able to knock out his ace, and he sends in Kakuna after it, which was a phenomenon that I had noticed happening sometimes during the Bugsy fight. It seems kind of random as to which Pokemon he chooses next. Sometimes it's Kakuna, sometimes it's Scyther, and Scyther coming out second is by far better. Even if Kakuna poisons me now, I still have the potential to win. In this case, it does. I go down to 6 hit points. I use 1 more Struggle, knocking it out, and Shuckle survives with 3 hit points defeating Bugsy. Now, I make a silly mistake here. I wanted to buy more potions, and I accidentally sell Mudslap at the mart. If I had reset to get Mudslap back, I would have to battle Bugsy again, and that makes absolutely no sense. Plus, just around the corner, I'm going to get access to Dig, which is a ground type move, so I figured I didn't need Mudslap anyway. But this will have significant ramifications later on. Now I have to battle the rival. There's no way for me to get Safeguard's PP back, so I am subject to the Ghastly's status conditions, and I would be anyway on the first turn just because I'm not faster. But after that, things get easier. He sends in Zubat second now. Again, he's altering his team order, which is a bit strange, and I'm not sure why. I knock it out with half health remaining and move on to the Quilava. I was expecting it to burn or crit or something like that, but it doesn't, and I actually pull through with 2 hit points remaining. This was another incredibly close fight. With him out of the way, the awfulness of the early game of Pokemon Crystal is done. and I think this is a really hopeful moment for Shuckle. So many things improve from here. Inside the forest, I get access to Headbutt, a 70 base power normal type move, but it does have a downside when used by a Pokemon this slow. I'm not really going to have access to its secondary effect, which is the chance to flinch. Here we can look at Headbutt's damage. It is really satisfying seeing Shuckle knock out these Slowpoke in 2 turns. Also, I have to say, it is fun outspeeding a Pokemon for once. These Slowpoke have 9 speed each. So in this case, I can actually flinch. And I do. North of the city, I'm going to fight Bugcatcher Arnie. He's this guy with a Venonat. He's technically optional because you can loop around by him through the national park, and then you can skip both of the trainers that are on Route 36, the Psychic as well as the guy who has Tangela. In this case though, I want to fight Arnie. It is slightly faster to go through national park, but only by about 1 to 2 seconds. Normally I like fighting Arnie because he gives me a little bit more experience and it's roughly the same amount of time. But today I'm fighting him because I need to go south of here to pick up the Rollout TM. This is by far Shuckle's best move. It gets the same type attack bonus, and every turn its power doubles. I teach it in the place of Encore. I obviously want to keep Safeguard for later in the run. Headbutt's good primary damage right now if I don't want to be locked into Rollout, and Withdraw might be helpful to increase my defense against a trainer like Whitney. After teaching this move, I do some optional training, against this Bird Keeper for example, but I'm starting to realize that Shuckle likely won't need to do this, because with outrageous defense stats, it should just be able to use Rollout and get a bunch of wins from here on out. So I'm going to discontinue fighting optional trainers at this point in the run and start targeting major battles. Before that though, I need to make a quick stop by the national park to pick up a Claw. I'm also going to grab the TM for Dig, which I decided to teach in the place of Withdraw since it can break Miltank's combo with Rollout. I head back to the gym because now I'm feeling ready to take on Whitney. Clefairy is first. I'm holding the Hardstone and I'm going to go for Rollout right away. What I'm hoping is that we'll take 3 to 4 turns to knock out her lead, and then I can one-shot or two-shot the following Miltank. Rollout misses after only 1 turn, so I have to re-establish it. Notice here in the top left that the power is successfully recalculating back down to the lower value, but as soon as Rollout hits, its power jumps up to what it's going to be on the next turn. This is a programming quirk. We've tried to work around it in the past, but Rollout is really hard to make accurately reflect on the overlay just because of how the RAM values are stored inside the game. The best way to think about this is the value you're seeing on screen is the value Rollout is about to deal when it gets used next. This only doesn't apply when Rollout is resetting because then it's going to be showing the higher value and it will reset as soon as I use the move. I am so sorry for this visual quirk. In this case I knock out the Clefairy with a 3rd turn Rollout, so I have my 4th turn Rollout against the Miltank, which is also going for its own Rollout. Because Shuckle is still rolling, it hits with its 5th turn and knocks out her cow on the 2nd turn. A really easy 3rd gym battle. Much easier than both Falkner and Bugsy, so things are looking up for this cute little bug rock. Actually, that made me curious. I've never really seen an animal that looks like this, so I looked it up, and it turns out Shuckle is based on something called an endolith, which is an organism that lives inside porous rocks. Pokemon is still teaching me things well into my 30s. Whitney's badge gives me access to a speed boost, which I guess is good. It takes my speed up from 21 to 23. I'm still not going to be moving first against most Pokemon, let's be real. Sudowoodo is next. In my first playthroughs, I require myself to defeat it. This is just for fun. Rollout is more than enough here. With 4 turns, I knock it out. Fighting the Komodo girls, I have the chance to learn Bide. I am not going to in this case. My current moveset is just so much better. Also, Bide feels a little bit counterintuitive to how the developers wanted you to play with Shuckle. If you have ridiculous defensive stats, then you're not going to take very much damage from Bide every turn, meaning the amount that you reflect back is going to be quite low. It seems like the type of Pokemon that would do best with a move like this is one with ridiculous HP, but low defensive stats. Something like Chansey. Before facing Morty or the rival in Burned Tower, I'm going to go all the way to the Lighthouse today. This allows me to collect 1 Mint Berry, but it also allows me to do extra training with Shuckle just to level up. And all of these people that I'm battling are mandatory. Of course, Dennis is technically optional, but in first playthroughs I always battle him. Shuckle's level 30 by the time I head back to Ecruteak City. In Crystal version, unlike in Gold and Silver, this battle against the rival is mandatory. I wasn't sure what to do here against his initial Haunter because it's quite fast and it loves to use Curse. That That said, in some battles it goes for Lick right away. If it goes for Lick, it would be better if I went for Safeguard turn 1 to try and block Paralysis. But if it goes for Curse, it would be better if I start rolling right away. It has the propensity to use Curse, so I decided to use Rollout. And in this case I get lucky because it goes for Lick, but it does not inflict Paralysis. Turn 2 it goes for Curse, lowering its HP, and then I knock it out with my second turn of Rollout. Now hopefully I will not miss, because I need good damage against the following Magnemite. It uses Supersonic. I'm able to 2-shot and move on to the rest of the Pokemon on his team. Quilava goes down to a single turn of rollout, leaving only the Zubat. In Generation 2, Curse doesn't inflict damage on turns you knock out the enemy's Pokemon, so Shuckle hasn't taken much damage from it yet. As a result, I am able to knock out the Zubat using rollout, and I overcome the rival. Okay, are you ready for an annoying fight? This Sage inside of the gym has 5 Ghastly. These are really frustrating to knock out with Shuckle because they have more speed, meaning they're always going to get a chance to attack, using either Curse or potentially Lick, and those two moves could combo together to give me a reset. If Rollout's accuracy or Lick cause me to miss moves, then Curse's damage is going to stack up very quickly. Also, this battle would be terrifying in Generation 4 because Curse deals damage even when you knock out the opponent's Pokemon. I also want to mention here why I'm not using Safeguard, because you might be curious. And it's really simple, Safeguard does not block Curse. And since I'm slower than both of the Ghastlies, I'm already exposed to Curse and Lick, but I don't want to take damage from Curse if I can prevent it. And all of this continues to be relevant against Morty, who's next. His first 2 Pokemon have Curse, and I am slower than every single Pokemon on his team. This initial fight goes so badly for me. Rollout isn't able to one-shot the Ghastly, then it uses Lick, and I get paralyzed right away. Then the status condition prevents Rollout from continuing. As a result, I take so much damage, the status condition activates again, and while I do knock out the Ghastly, I only have 12 hit points left over, so I decided to reset. The next fight is much better for me. While Ghastly does use Lick, it doesn't paralyze, so Shuckle knocks it out with its second hit. Haunter comes in, it's faster, using Nightshade, which deals so much damage. This is one of the moves that Shuckle fears the most. My third rollout continues the spree and knocks the Haunter out. Okay, Gengar, please use Hypnosis. If it does, I am not going to take more damage, making it more likely that it'll survive the final Haunter. It does, missing, then rollout hits, and Morty's ace goes down in 1 hit. Okay, so the final Haunter comes in, it goes for Nightshade, but it's only level 23. I have 31 HP, so Shuckle survives with 8 hit points. Now, will Rollout hit for the 5th time in a row? And it does. So I beat Morty on my second attempt. There's a fork in the road here. I have to choose, do I go and fight Chuck next, or do I battle Price? Both routes involve water-type Pokemon. Price has a Seal and a Dugong, and I also need to battle the Gyarados on the Lake of Rage. However, I think it's key to note that Price's Pokemon, as well as the Gyarados on the Lake of Rage, don't have any water-type moves, and Chuck's Poliwrath knows Surf. So the decision seems clear. Fight the Gyarados at the Lake of Rage, do the Rocket plotline, and then battle Price. The thing is, the Gyarados on the Lake of Rage does have another fixed damage move, Dragon Rage. It does 40 damage every hit, and Shuckle only has 73 HP. In the early Pokemon games, this seems to be a design tenet that Game Freak was operating under. If a Pokemon has a high defensive stat, we're going to give it a low HP stat. You can see this in another defensive Pokemon like Onix. So unfortunately I can't survive 2 Dragon Rages, so I take 1 reset here to Gyarados. But it doesn't know which move it should be using. Sometimes it's going to spam Leer or Bite, and because of that I can battle it again, and I take a win on my second attempt. Okay, I gotta do the Rocket plotline. I just want to mention here it's satisfying that Shuckle is faster than this scientist and his 3 Magnemites. I can use Dig and one-shot all of them. It's nice whenever I move first in this playthrough. By the way, I was just not taking the Mint Berry off of Shuckle. I think I probably should equip the Quick Claw and just leave it on Shuckle for the remainder of the run until I get to Kanto, because that's where Shuckle gets a much better held item. Okay, let's talk about Executive Ariana. She doesn't have a name in this game, but that's what her name is in Heart Gold. This fight is almost never a problem, and I sat here dumbfounded as it started to be an issue because the Arbok outspeeds, and it's using Bite, which has a chance to flinch. If it continuously flinches Shuckle, there is the potential that I would lose this battle. This is one of the worst performances a Pokemon has ever had against her, and I still managed to win. With her out of the way, I head into Price's gym. Notice here I do battle Border Douglas. He's this guy with 2 shelters and 1 cloister. Initially I was a little bit scared that the cloister was going to consistently break Rollout's combo using Protect, but it doesn't. It just sets up its defense and then I one-shot. Now I want you to remember this mid-game training that I'm doing because he is technically optional. He's a spinner, but in my ROM, all of the spinners never will catch me so that these runs are all predictably similar. I want to ensure that all the species are ranked fairly at the end of this entire process. Believe me though, at the end of this entire run, we're going to come back to the idea of optional training. Maybe I'm doing too little and I'm going to pay the price later on, but for now, let's focus on major battles. Seals first. I'm going to knock it out slowly because it's not an ice type, which is strange when you're fighting the ice type gym leader. Why didn't they give Price Sneasel and Delibird? That would have been a much more Gen 2 thematic team. Anyway, using Rollout, I'm able to steamroll the seal in 3 hits, then Piloswine comes in and it does take 2 hits to knock out. My 4th turn Rollout isn't quite enough. This does mean Rollout resets on the Dugong. It's a little bit unfortunate, but it's going to use Rest once it gets to low health, so I stack up more Rollouts and finish off his final Pokemon. Overall, an easy battle. Actually, the last 3 gym leaders have been fairly straightforward. That said, things are about to get a little bit more difficult. I knew that Chuck's Poliwrath had the potential to be extremely annoying, so I do some training on the ocean. Again, more mid-game training, but is it enough? Well, it's definitely enough to take on the trainers inside of Chuck's gym. The tag team duo doesn't cause any issues. After that, Black Belt Knob is a little bit more scary because his 2 Pokemon have Seismic Toss, but they aren't always using it, so I am able to win here as well. Okay, it's time to take on Chuck. I thought this one was going to be pretty brutal. Okay, it's time to take on Chuck. I thought this one was going to be pretty brutal. The first thing we need to remember is that Rollout is not very effective here, and you can see that against the Primeape. It is not doing much damage. I unfortunately have a total of 4 misses against the Primeape, which is just terrible luck. Luckily, it isn't doing that much damage every turn, so I can take my time here, and I will be able to use Rest later into the fight. I didn't mention it until now, but I did teach that move to Shuckle because I think it will be useful throughout the playthrough. By the time Rollout gets going, it takes a total of 4 turns to knock out the Primeape. It would have still from full health. And that leaves me with my 5th most powerful Rollout with the increase from the Hardstone against the Poliwrath. The water type uses Surf first, and it's doing less damage than I was expecting. Apparently the Poliwags in the early game are more intimidating. In this case, my 5th Rollout completely fizzles, missing. I had a choice as to what I was going to do next. If I commit to Rollout, then I won't be able to heal because you can't discontinue using the move. So I decided to go for Safeguard so that Dynamic Punch cannot confuse me and the Poliwrath can't use Hypnosis. After that, I use Rest, and then eventually once Shuckle wakes up, I did go for Rollout, locking me into the attacking move, and because of that, it misses and then Surf finishes me off. What I really want to have happen here is Rollout stack up 4 times on the Primeape and then hit the Poliwrath with the 5th turn. I think if I do that, I'll just win. In the next battle, everything is on track. Then I use the 5th Rollout on Poliwrath and it doesn't knock it out. Alright, that's really annoying. It gets me with Hypnosis. I do wake up though and use another Rollout. However, from this tiny amount of health, Poliwrath still survives because Shuckle is just so weak. It uses another Hypnosis and then once again gets me with Surf. So what it looks like now is I need 4 hits for Primeape, Rollout 5 on Poliwrath, plus 2 more Rollouts in order to knock it out. I think the solution here is pretty obvious. When the Poliwrath's on low health, I should be going for Dig because it has better damage than the 1st and 2nd turn of Rollout. That said, Shuckle is still pretty weak. I'm not sure it would knock out the Poliwrath. In this case, I just get unlucky because it hits with Hypnosis, and that's another loss. I don't get lucky on my next attempt, but in the 4th battle, finally, I hit my 5th Rollout, taking the Poliwrath down to low health. This time, though, I rolled better damage. It is left with only the tiniest sliver. I have a Mint Berry, so I recover from Hypnosis, use Rollout 1 more time, and Chuck is defeated. Okay, so this battle was nowhere near as difficult as Bugsy. I think it's less random than Faulkner was, but Chuck seems like the trainer that's better suited to taking Shuckle out. All of that said, now I need to go and face Jasmine. and I don't have particularly good options against her steel types, which I will remind you are super effective against Shuckle. I think for this battle, I am obviously relying on Dig for damage and then Rest to be able to stall her Pokemon out. The question is, how much damage is Shuckle going to take? Magnemite is first. I go for Dig right away. By the way, Shuckle is speed tied with both of her initial 2 Pokemon, and it is faster than her Steelix. I get a lucky critical hit right away, so I knock out the first Magnemite in 1 turn, and then she sends in Steelix. Okay, how much damage is Iron Tail going to do? I use Dig, it's doing a tiny amount. Iron Tail does about 1/3, and it also lowers my defense. There's a 30% chance for this to happen on every turn, and Iron Tail has 15 PP. Because of the defense drops, I'm not going to be able to stall the Steelix out now, and the fact that I'm not faster than the Magnemites means that the beginning of the battle is also going to be inconsistent. After I faint, I reset and I decided to do more training. There's a bunch of experience-rich trainers around the Lake of Rage now. They appeared once I completed the Rocket headquarters. Defeating them brings Shuckle close to level 42, and I continue my training south of Goldenrod City. There's these 3 trainers in this little secret area, and after I defeat the last of them, I can talk to her and get access to the soft sand. I continue grinding around Olivine City all the way up until level 45 over the next damage rounding threshold, and then I return to Jasmine. Now I'm able to outspeed, and Dig does consistently one-shot the Magnemites without a critical hit. Okay, Steelix time. Here, my strategy's pretty simple. I want to be using Dig for primary damage. It's also wasting 2 Iron Tails every single time I use it, and there's a chance that Steelix misses because Iron Tail is very inconsistent. It only has 75% accuracy. If I can just force the Steelix to use all 15 of these PP, then it's going to have to resort to Rock Throw. That move doesn't get the same type attack bonus, and it also only has 15 PP. I think there's the potential for Shuckle to completely stall out her Steelix so that it just starts using moves like Screech and Sunny Day, and then I can knock it out for free, even if I have to resort to Rollout, which is probably going to be the case because Jasmine does have 1 Hyper Potion, and she really likes to use it once her Steelix falls below 50% health. The only problem with this plan is that once I have a defense drop, I can't really use Rest anymore, so then I'm relying on the fact that the Steelix is just going to miss a bunch of Iron Tails. And this leads to 1, 2, and 3 resets. I had to think about what I was doing here, and I decided to try an alternative strategy. If I fly to Violet City and then walk to Route 36, I can talk to this guy who gives me the TM for Rock Smash. Now in Generation 2, it only has a base power of 20, but it still does have a 50% chance to drop your opponent's defense stat. Maybe I can use this fighting type move in the place of Safeguard to lower Steelix's defense so that Dig does more damage per turn. This may give me a path to successfully defeating Jasmine, but note that I have given up Safeguard, so I won't be able to block status conditions for the remainder of the run. I'm not sure if this is a good trade-off. Using Rock Smash, I really wasn't having success. If I'm not using Dig, I'm not depleting the PP of Iron Tail quite as fast, and I'm also giving Steelix more opportunities to drop my defense. Because of that, eventually I just decided to revert to the original strategy and wait for all of the luck to align. The funny thing is, right after I stopped using Rock Smash, things started playing out very well for me. I'm using Rest, Steelix is missing a lot with Iron Tail, and eventually it runs out, having to then resort to Rock Throw. The thing is, this move still does decent damage because it is super effective. However, it's not getting the same type attack bonus, and it also has a much lower base power. But its accuracy is better in Generation 2. It's no longer the abysmal 65% from Generation 1. This takes time. I have to spam Rest a lot, but eventually I completely deplete the Steelix's attacking moves, and then I can use Rollout to slowly chip it down. This also takes a really long time, but eventually Jasmine's ace faints and I move on to Magnemite. I have saved some PP on Dig so that I can just one-shot this thing at the very end of the battle. It's easy to clean up, and with that I earn myself the 7th badge. Okay, it's time for the Rocket plotline next. Now, I was really worried for Petrol. He has a team of 6 Pokemon. They love to use moves like Smokescreen to lower your accuracy and Sludge to poison you. The former of these is going to be problematic when I'm having to rely on Rollout, and the Coughing uses it right away. The latter is going to be problematic if it happens to me when I'm mid-Rollout, and then I can't stop using the move, and poison damage potentially accumulates too much after I miss. Luckily for me, I do have Rest, so even though my accuracy is lowered and Rollout's not very consistent anymore, having only a 67% chance to hit every turn, I can just consistently heal the poison status condition. So in the end, Petrol is not a threat, he's just an annoyance. The rival in the underground is completely different though. There are so many status conditions that I have to contend with at the beginning of the battle. In this case though, I'm lucky I make it through without confusion and paralysis. After that, there's a significant problem because Haunter is next, and it likes to use Curse. Because of where I am in my rollout chain, I am likely going to run out on the next Sneasel, and then I'm going to have to take time to start rolling again before the Quilava. While I am super effective against the Sneasel, I just don't have the attack stat I need to knock it out in a single hit, so I'm continuously taking damage. And remember, most of his Pokemon are faster than Shuckle, with the exception of Magnemite. So in the end, Quilava gets me with a Flame Wheel. And yes, this is Quilava. It's because it's level 32, and it evolves to Typhlosion at level 36. Both of the other starters are fully evolved by this point. But Feraligatr still only knows Water Gun, so usually that's why I say that team is completely trash. I tried the fight again and it goes basically the same. I'm paralyzed, I run out of rollout by the Sneasel, I have Curse. Because of that, I'm taking so much damage, and this time I don't even make it to his final Pokemon. I was at a bit of a loss here. I didn't strategically see the path to victory. Maybe the Quick Claw can help me. If I move first against the Haunter, then I'll knock it out before it uses Curse. However, there's another way that I can win. The Magnemite cannot paralyze me. I can use Dig against it, knocking it out, and then I start using Rollout on the Haunter. Because of this, I have displaced my rollout chain from the beginning of the battle to the middle of the battle. What I'm hoping is that from here I will one-hit the Sneasel and one-hit the Quilava without missing. I'm brought to orange health doing this, but because of my defensive stats, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to survive a Flame Wheel. And in this case, I do, allowing me to hit with one more rollout. It doesn't miss, so the rival's defeated. While making my way through the underground, I was noticing a bit of a trend. These Coughing really like to use self-destruct against Shuckle. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because they see that all their moves are resisted, so they figure they should just go for the most powerful thing and then let the trainer send out the next team member. I'm not sure. Either way, it is a terrible choice. In the department store, I pick up some vitamins. I just bought Carbos and protein. I don't really know if these are the best options for Shuckle. Maybe it makes more sense to do calcium because red is the final trainer, and notably, I am not getting a special defense boost because of the badge boost glitch. In Generation 2, if your special attack is not within certain ranges, your special defense will not receive a boost. So Shuckle would need to have 206 special attack before the badge boost in order to receive the special defense boost as well. Right now my special attack is 50 and I am level 49. There is no way I am ever going to get a special defense boost. So if you're looking at my stats in the bottom left and you see the discrepancy between my physical defense and my special defense, that's what's going on. By the way, there are very few Pokemon that I do these challenges with that get enough special attack by the end of the game to get the special defense boost. And I've had some playthroughs in the past, like my Misdreavus stream a long time ago, where getting the special defense boost was what was required in order to beat Red, because 5 of his 6 Pokemon are special attackers. By the way, I didn't plan out my vitamins precisely, and I no longer have the little feature that shows me how many I have left to use in each stat, so I overbought. I sell the remaining vitamins and purchase calcium instead to improve my special attack and special defense, because these two stats function off of a unified quantity of stat experience. At the top of the tower, I have to fight Ariana again. By the way, the Murkrow has Nightshade, which is terrifying. It does massive damage to Shuckle, but Rollout still hits and I win. On my way to Blackthorn City, I do some optional training, and like I've been saying with all of the other optional training that I've done after Bugsy, we will reflect on this later. Inside Ice Path, I pick up the Rest TM. This might be useful, but I don't really see a scenario where Shuckle is gonna unlearn Rest after this point in the game. Okay, time for the final gym leader in Johto. Theoretically, Clair is going to be fairly simple, but I think that Shuckle could have resets here. Number 1, all of the Dragonairs are faster than me, meaning they're going to use Thunder Wave to try and paralyze. I went for Safeguard because in Generation 2, certain status moves that the AI uses have a 25% chance to miss, and Thunder Wave is one of them. If it misses, then I can establish Safeguard and use Rollout to sweep the rest of her team. Unfortunately for me, I do get paralyzed, but this isn't the end of the world. I can use Rest to recover both my speed and to get rid of the status condition. The two two Pokemon that are scariest on Clair's team is the first Dragonair and then the Kingdra, which she sends in second. I'm using Rollout at this point, and I do a lot of damage, but Kingdra survives and uses Smokescreen. Then she uses a Hyper Potion, but Rollout continues doing more damage and her ace goes down. After that, her next Dragonair comes out and it's using Dragon Breath, which is neutral. It's doing okay damage, but I have time to use Rest. As a result, Shuckle is just not going to faint from here, even if it gets paralyzed, which it does, forcing me to use another Rest and waste a bunch more time. I heal up and eventually I can use another Rollout, knocking out her final two Pokemon. Okay, final gym leaders out of the way, let's head into Dragon's Den. There is one mandatory trainer in here. He is a Crystal version exclusive. Well, he might be in Gold and Silver, but he's been repositioned for Crystal, and in this game he is mandatory. As soon as you come through the door, he catches you. His Dragonair has Dragon Rage, which is really scary. Rollout is not doing enough damage, and as a result, my Shuckle goes down. Okay, this is one case where blacking out does make sense. I'm gonna keep the win from Clair. Plus, I'm going to be able to save before the entrance so that I can battle him again if I lose to Dragon Rage for a second time. It turns out I was just getting unlucky. It looks like the Dragonair is randomizing its move selection because it uses Wrap on the second turn. Due to this, I beat him easily on the second attempt. Clair gives me the Rising Badge. This means I can use Waterfall outside of battle. This is incredibly important for Shuckle, because now I can navigate this portion of Mount Mortar. Normally I come in here just to pick up this rare candy, however today I have another purpose. If I continue walking over to the right-hand portion of the cave, I can surf past this pond and a couple others. Then, walking and looping around in kind of an S shape, eventually I will arrive at this TM. It's TM 40, which is Defense Curl. Initially it seems like this move is completely useless because Shuckle already has ridiculous defense and it gets a badge boost in that stat. However, Defense Curl, if you don't know, has an interesting interaction with Rollout. When you use Defense Curl, it sets a flag, which we could call the curled flag. In this case, once the curled flag is set, Rollout will deal double damage. Essentially what this means is it's like Rollout is always starting from turn 2, and then it can go all the way up to turn 6, so double the damage that turn 5 would have dealt previously. But I think the true advantage of using Defense Curl is the fact that the first turn of Rollout is doubled. This means if Shuckle misses, it starts from a better place in the sequence, re-establishing the move. If you think back to my battle against Chuck, this would have helped in two ways. Number one, Rollout number 5 would have easily one-shot the Poliwrath. And if for some reason I knocked out the Primeape in less turns, and then Rollout number 4 did not one-shot the Poliwrath, well, I still would have had Rollout 5 to knock out the Poliwrath on the next turn. And if I missed, then the initial Rollout that I would use after that would do more damage and likely get the knockout. Now you will have noticed that I haven't taught Defense Curl right away. Instead, I'm relying on Dig. The reason is purely so I can escape dungeons while collecting rare candies. Although, while I was thinking about it, the rival also does have a Magneton just before the league, so I'll hold on to Dig until I've defeated him. Even though the Quilava has now fully evolved into Typhlosion, this battle is much easier. He leads with Sneasel, so he's unable to confuse me like before. Then he skips over Golbat and sends in Magneton next. This is a bit annoying because it does paralyze me. I have to use Rest once, but then I get a Dig off and I knock it out without getting paralyzed again. Haunter is next, and I got a bit concerned here because I want to knock it out as fast as possible so that I don't take damage from Curse. Because of that, I use Dig instead. This puts me in the position where once the Haunter faints, I have to start establishing Rollout on the Golbat. To do this, I have to 2-hit, meaning I take 2 turns of Wing Attack and 1 turn of Curse. This leaves Shuckle with 11 hit points. The rival sends in Typhlosion next. It uses Flame Wheel. This brings Shuckle down to 1 hit point. I cannot believe I survived. Rollout hits, Typhlosion faints, and Kadabra comes out next. Now, this Pokemon has 2 attacking moves, Psybeam and Future Sight. If it uses Psybeam, I lose. If it uses Future Sight, I win, provided Rollout hits. It goes for Future Sight. Rollout hits, and with that, the rival's done. Now, it's time for the Elite Four. Will is the first trainer where Defense Curl really starts to make sense. There are nuisances in this fight. 4 of his 5 Pokemon outspeed Shuckle. That leaves it vulnerable to Confuse Ray from both Xatu and Lovely Kiss from the Jinx. Now, despite the status conditions kind of being threats, I don't really need to worry about them. Those status conditions are more nuisances though, because they just waste time. Confuse Ray, for example, is not going to do much to Shuckle because there's such a huge delta between its attack and defense. When a Pokemon deals self-inflicted damage, it is using its attacking stat against its defense, so Shuckle won't deal much damage to itself. Also, Lovely Kiss isn't really going to allow the Jinx to knock us out faster. The only threat there is if it puts us to sleep and then lowers our special defense using Psychic. This eventually does happen against the Executor, but I should have used Rest on the prior turn anyway in order to heal. So I take one reset. I tried again, it's not working particularly well, so I decided to switch up my moveset and teach Defense Curl in the place of Dig. I think this might be Shuckle's final set. Rollout, Defense Curl, Safeguard, and Rest. If I set up Safeguard here early in the fight, it looks like Will is holding the Jinx back, knowing that it has Lovely Kiss, or something similar to that. He sends in Slowbro second. I knock it out, move on to the Jinx, and then my Safeguard has expired, so it's able to put me to sleep. But it's not an issue. I'm going to put myself to sleep with Rest eventually, healing up a bunch, re-establishing Safeguard, and then knocking Jinx out using Rollout. Now, one thing to know about the Defense Curl Rollout combo. You only need to set up once. After that, Rollout will always receive the bonus damage. That means with a first turn hit from Rollout, I am able to one-shot the Jinx. Pretty easy. Xatu goes down to a final hit, but surprisingly, the final Executor hangs on with a sliver of health. But Psychic is no threat. Okay, Koga, his Ariados is incompetent, giving me time to set up once with Defense Curl. Then I'm going to use Safeguard because I don't want to get hit by Toxic later into the battle. It takes 2 turns to knock out Ariados, then Fortress comes in, which technically takes neutral damage from Rollout. But here, I get a lucky critical hit. Muck is next, Rollout one-shots, and then Crobat sets up double team, so my Rollout misses. It takes a little while to knock it out, it even gets Toxic off. He uses a full restore, but Rollout is rolling by this time, and then Crobat goes down. The fact that there's one more Pokemon, and it's Venomoth, is a little bit concerning. It's faster, and it's a sound-type Pokemon, so it uses supersonic, confusing Shuckle. In combination with the bad poison, I wasn't sure if I was gonna pull through, but luckily Shuckle hits with Rollout and Venomoth faints. Okay, Bruno's next. His Hitmontop is another perfect opportunity to set up with Defense Curl. It loves to use Dig, which is just terrible. Also, Rollout is resisted by Bruno's Pokemon, so it's doing very little damage. I took extra time here on the Hitmontop and set up with Defense Curl all the way to +4. Now, interestingly, in Generation 2, when your stat maxes out at 999, you will not be able to use Defense Curl anymore, even though there are still free stage modifiers. So in this case, at +4, I have 999 defense, which is a rare thing to occur in a playthrough, especially at only level 57. However, I spammed a few more Defense Curls thinking that I could get to +6, but I can't. After that, I get to using Rollout. It's taking a long time, but it is going to eventually work. Well, I think it is. I could run out of PP potentially, but here's the thing about Rollout. Every time you start using it, it deducts 1 PP, but from there it doesn't deduct any more until you have to choose it again. This means Shuckle can go for days. I'm not scared of the fighting type damage because my defense stat is so ridiculous. The only thing I would have to worry about is the Machamp getting a critical hit with Cross Chop, but provided my HP is still pretty high, Shuckle should survive one of these. I knock out Bruno's Ace, move on to the Hitmonlee, and it knows it can't do good damage against me, so it uses Swagger, which is actually really helpful. Thanks for the attack bonus. With it, I'm able to finish off his final 2 fighting types a little bit more quickly. Okay, Karen, she has an Umbreon. It's awful. It loves to use Confuse Ray and Sand Attack. Both of these afflict me at the beginning of the battle, and when the Umbreon uses a second Sand Attack, I just decided to cut my losses and reset. I know that this is going to be a long fight. Every single fight is a long fight for Shuckle, so I don't have to drag my way through 2 accuracy debuffs. In the next battle, I defeat the Umbreon with only 1. Vileplume's next. It uses Stun Spore, paralyzing me. From there, I miss a Rollout, and then I can use Rest to recover my health and remove the status condition. Now, I was worried about this fight because like the rival and Morty, she has a ghost Pokemon, Gengar, with Curse. I have equipped the Quick Claw just for this thing, so that I have the chance to move first. And right away it activates, and Shuckle knocks the Gengar out in a single turn. Something I wasn't anticipating in this fight is just how dedicated both Murkrow and Houndoom would be to using Whirlwind and Roar. They really don't want to fight Shuckle. In this case, it's actually a disadvantage for Shuckle that they're doing this. It is, number 1, wasting time, and number 2, it does clear the curled flag, so I no longer get the bonus damage from Rollout. Also, every time they use one of these moves, it breaks my combo, so I have to re-establish Rollout all over from the beginning. It's really annoying. Also, making things even worse is the fact that Houndoom does decent damage using Flamethrower, so I have to use Rest. When I do this, I have to switch back in already asleep and then take turns to wake up while it is roaring me out over and over again. Someone is going to ask, why don't you just deposit your HM users before you do the League every time? Because it wastes a lot of time. That's the simple reason. After the League, you want to use Fly to go to Olivine City to proceed with the Kanto section of the game. But if you deposit all of your HM users, you number one have to take the mail off of Kenya before you can put Kenya into the PC. And then number two, you have to walk to Cherry Grove City using a single rappel and then withdraw all your HM users from the PC. Not to mention you have to spend time depositing them in the PC in the first place. In a normal playthrough, it just doesn't make sense to do all of this to counter out one Whirlwind or one Roar that might happen on these two Pokemon, which are usually not big players in the league. The only reason this is really annoying from a conceptual point of view is if, for instance, the Umbreon has lowered your accuracy by 1 or 2 stages, and then they switch you out and it actually ends up being a benefit for your Pokemon. My rule surrounding this is I just have to switch back in. But in this case, I do think for Shuckle, it would overall be a time savings to just deposit all my HM users and then walk to Cherry Grove City, because this takes a really long time against the Houndoom. Still, I am eventually able to pull through with a victory, so now it's time for Lance. I knew the Gyarados is going to waste at least one turn going for Rain Dance, but I think it was a little bit overconfident with my special defense. I figured I could set up Defense Curl turn 1, then go for Safeguard turn 2 to hopefully block the next 2 Dragonite's use of Thunder Wave. This all does not turn out well for me, because Surf is doing so much damage when it's boosted by the rain. By the time I use Rollout to knock the Gyarados out over 2 turns, Shuckle is left with 24 hit points, and to my dismay, even though I have Safeguard in place, Lance sends in Aerodactyl second. It uses Rock Slide, Shuckle flinches, and that's that. So I have to take a more simple approach, which is just Defense Curl turn 1 when the Gyarados is hopefully setting up. In this case, it actually goes for Surf on the first turn and Rain Dance on the second turn, which is just a terrible combo. Because of that, I have high green health when the Aerodactyl comes in. Also, the Quick Claw activates, so I move first with Rollout and Aerodactyl faints without the chance to flinch me. Then his Ace Dragonite comes in, it goes for Outrage, doing very little damage, and Rollout knocks it out. Charizard follows, Flamethrower does almost nothing, and Rollout gets another one hit, but it's going to reset here on the next Dragonite. That said, it's using Thunder Wave, but this status condition comes a little bit too late into the fight. Plus, I can use Safeguard, then rest, wake up, still have some Safeguards left over, and start rolling again. This prevents paralysis. I'm back down under half health. The next Dragonite is able to paralyze me, but it doesn't stop Rollout's combo, and with that, Lance is defeated. Shuckle gets a split of 2 hours, 27 minutes, and 5 seconds. Now, I'm gonna be completely honest, this is a terrible Lance split. Some Pokemon can beat him under 50 minutes here, like 49, 50, something like that. In a lot of cases, I feel like the Pokemon isn't doing particularly well if their Lance split is around 1 hour. So in this case, Shuckle's results are absolutely dismal. However, I do want to mention I only have 35 faults, and overall this run has been a lot easier than I was expecting. When you look at Shuckle's move pool as well as its attacking stats, I truly expected this to take forever, but Rollout is such a fantastic move. Okay, moving on with the Kanto section of the game. Well, actually before that, we have to go on the SS Aqua. There is this sailor who I never talk about. He has a Machop, a Machoke, and a Psyduck. He is easy for literally every Pokemon, but in this case, I get a little bit scared because both the Machop and the Machoke have Seismic Toss, so they can deal really good damage to Shuckle. This is the first and only time I think I'm going to mention this guy on the channel. Still, Shuckle is able to win right away. As soon as I arrive in Celadon City, I go to the apartment building and pick up the TM for Curse. This is kind of a duplication of one of the aspects of Defense Curl, but the fact that I can increase my attack stat now is going to be a major advantage. But I don't want to give up Safeguard just yet. For example, it can be useful inside of Erica's gym. There are a bunch of trainers here where Safeguard gives me an advantage. Like, this Victory Bell and Vileplume both cannot use Stun Spore or Sleep Powder. Then on the next next trainer's team, there is an Executor, which really likes to spam Hypnosis, and it can waste a lot of time, but Safeguard gives me a way to play around this status condition. Not to mention the final trainer in the gym that has a Paris with Spore and a Parasect that also knows this move, and then an Execute that has Stun Spore and Poison Powder. You would expect Erica's team would be packed with status conditions as well, but it really isn't. The Tangela is the Pokemon that has Sleep Powder. Still, I'm gonna knock it out over several turns, so establishing Safeguard here does have an advantage. After that, I get Rolling, and then Rollout crushes all of her Pokemon. It continues crushing Pokemon in Sabrina's gym, taking out her Psychic types. Of the gym leaders in Kanto, I think Misty theoretically seems the strongest against Shuckle, and she is actually pretty good. After setting up Defense Curl, the Golduck is able to do significant damage before I knock it out. I have only orange health remaining. However, notice here that I picked up the Leftovers. I got this in Celadon City, and this health item is fantastic for Shuckle. I mentioned before there was a better item in Kanto. This is it. The fact that I'm recovering a percentage of my health every turn, and the enemies aren't doing much to me because of my outrageous defenses, makes Shuckle essentially invincible outside of this fight, because I scrape through with a victory here, having only 3 hit points remaining. Surge is easy. This is where we really start to see the benefit of having the Leftovers. His Pokemon can't even get me under green health, and in most cases, they don't even do enough damage to me to prevent the Leftovers healing me to full. Brock does a little bit better because his Rock-type moves are super effective, and he also has 2 Water types. Blaine is bad, and recently on stream with Steve M Plays and Speedrunner0218, we had a discussion about Janine. Will there ever be a Pokemon that struggles against her? And the conclusion we came to is, if you can beat Lance in the Elite Four, you're just not gonna have problems against Janine. She is so bad. So I don't think there will ever be a Pokemon that makes it by Lance that will get to this fight and actually have a rough time. This might actually be the last time on the channel I talk about her, except for live streams, of course. I'll probably mention her there. Alright, now I'm ready to teleport back to Viridian City to save a tiny amount of time, and next we have to face Blue. This fight starts off in an annoying way. The Pidgeot is loving to use Whirlwind, so I'm gonna reset and deposit all of my HM users so that it can't do this anymore. This lets me set up with Defense Curl, then I use Rollout. It takes 3 hits to knock the Rhydon out, which is annoying, but after that things get easier. The Gyarados you'd think would be using Hydro Pump doing decent damage, maybe even boosting itself with the rain, but it boosts itself on the first turn and then gets caught in a healing loop with full restores as I stack up Rollout, so it goes down without doing anything. Alakazam falls, Arcanine falls, and so does Executor, although it takes a little bit of time. Okay, I think it is going to be possible for Shuckle to beat Red in under 3 hours, in my first playthrough. This went so much better than I was expecting. Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, it's not over yet. That said, I have 10 rare candies sitting in my bag right now, so I can level up to 76 whenever I want. But first I wanted to try Red at level 66, just to see if it was possible. To prepare, I teach Curse in the place of Safeguard. The strategy here felt fairly simple. I should set up with Defense Curl to ensure that I have the curled flag, and then go for Curse, increasing my attack and my defense. Now my speed technically does matter because I was outspeeding the Snorlax by 1 point, but it really in practice doesn't matter because the Snorlax is the Pokemon that Shuckle fears least on Red's team. Pikachu is dealing decent damage with each hit from Thunder. That said, I should just be able to stall it out by using Rest, provided it doesn't paralyze me and then I get bad luck. I heal once with Rest, once I'm on green health, then I start using Rollout, and it takes 2 turns to knock out the Electric Mouse. From there, Blastoise is next. Now Shuckle has so much defense and such high health that it sets up Rain Dance before attacking, which is an advantage for me because then Rollout just one-shots the water type and it never gets to do anything. Snorlax is next. Rollout 1 hits. Am I just gonna sweep his team? It looks like it. Venusaur comes in, Giga Drain does okay damage, but then Rollout 1 hits. It's actually surprising that Venusaur went for Giga Drain. Normally it goes for Solar Beam or Sunny Day. Next is Espeon. Here I have to re-establish Rollout, and I take a lot of damage from Psychic. I recover some health with Leftovers, survive 1 more hit from Psychic, and then knock it out. All that remains is Charizard. I have 35 hit points. Will I survive the Flamethrower? The answer is no. Shuckle takes a reset. I have 2 annoying resets to the Pikachu before I make it back to the Blastoise. This time though, I have set up fully to +6. That meant Rollout one-shot the Pikachu, and because of this, the Blastoise survives my initial attack. That allows it to set up with Rain Dance and use Surf, which brings Shuckle to low red health. While I am recovering HP, I need to use Rest on the Snorlax, but from there I was feeling pretty confident on the remainder of Red's team. The problem is, when I start using Rollout, Snorlax goes for Body Slam and paralyzes me, which then breaks my combo on the Venusaur. I try to use Rest and I get caught in a bit of a healing loop while it's using Solar Beam every turn with Sunny Day. Eventually, I managed to finish the Venusaur, but not with high health because of Solar Beam, and as a result, the Espeon gets me. Okay, look at the timer, 2 hours, 52 minutes, and 50 seconds. I don't want to waste more time. I might need some luck to beat Red, so I'm going to use my 10 rare candies to go all the way to level 76 before trying again. Even at this level, I can get unlucky. Paralysis on the Snorlax, and I'm already caught in a rollout combo from the Blastoise, so I cannot heal here. I thought that I might have a chance to on the Venusaur because paralysis breaks my combo, but despite my increased levels, Solar Beam is still doing enough damage to knock out Shuckle. I try again. At +6, I one-shot the Pikachu, then Blastoise comes out, and instead of Rain Dance or Surf, it uses Whirlpool. I guess that's the best move for it to do. Now, in this case, I went for Defense Curl first. In the previous battle, I had gone for Curse first, which is objectively the mistake, because then when my defense stat maxes out at +3, I can't use Defense Curl to set the curled flag to increase Rollout's initial damage. Because of this, and likely my increased levels, I am able to one-shot the Blastoise on the first turn. Rollout then takes care of Snorlax, it continues on the Venusaur avoiding Solar Beam, Espeon comes out, Rollout continues and one-shots. That leaves only Charizard. And in this case, Flamethrower doesn't do nearly enough, I have green health left over, and Rollout finishes off Red's final Pokemon. Shuckle finishes the game with a time of 2 hours, 55 minutes, and 15 seconds, with 41 faults consisting of 40 resets and 1 blackout. It finished the game at level 76 with a game time of 9 hours and 35 minutes. Just a brief reflection on this first run, and I've said it before, but Shuckle is kind of a beast. It is way better than I was expecting. I was anticipating that this first run would be somewhere between 4 and 5 hours, and getting a time under 3 hours really shocked me. I also thought Shuckle would need a much higher level in order to beat the game, but in this case it did it at level 76. Now, we're going to get into my optimized playthrough. Well, optimized to some extent. Optimized as much as you can with Shuckle. This thing still takes a lot of luck in some fights, because Rollout is inherently inconsistent. While we watch this footage, I want to mention some testing I did between the first and the second playthrough. The biggest place that I tested was Red, because I wanted to see if it was possible to do it at a lower level. And hilariously, I came back and beat him 2 or 3 times in a row at level 66. So Shuckle doesn't need a high level at the end of the game. So this is where I want to tie in all of the optional training that I was doing before. Shuckle doesn't need any of it. Once it clears the rival and Bugsy in Azalea Town, it doesn't need to fight another optional trainer for the remainder of the run. You might want to fight some optional trainers to make occasional fights like Chuck a little bit easier, but there are ways to still win without doing any more optional battles. So if I want to get a really good Shuckle time, I need to ensure that I beat Bugsy as fast as is possible. Now, there are 2 potential strategies for him that I considered. Number 1 is leveling all the way to 28 to get access to Bide. I think this is by far the most consistent approach to beating him. If you want to torture yourself doing a Shuckle-only Nuzlocke, which I would not wish on my worst enemy, then you should definitely level to 28 and use the Bide strategy against Bugsy. That said, if you're shooting for the best possible finish time, I think it is far better to arrive in Azalea Town and fight Bugsy, just hoping for Fury Cutter to miss. Leveling up beyond the available trainers in the early game is just going to be wasted time. Now, one quick thing to mention is Falkner. He's annoying, but in most cases, Shuckle's actually pretty competent against him, and I have no losses in this second run. Now, when I was preparing for Bugsy and spamming out all of the PP that I gained from Kurt's mandatory heal, I fought this guy with Paris inside the gym. I didn't think he would be an issue, but he ends up causing me to black out. This run has already taken 30 minutes of time, so I am not going to restart from here. It's a bit frustrating, and I do get teleported back to Violet City, but this isn't the worst thing in the world because I want to train to level 23 anyways to be over a damage rounding threshold, before I start resetting over and over again into Bugsy. This could take a while, but you could also win on your first battle. In this case, I only have 2 resets and then I beat Bugsy. So this went very well. I was so excited about this because in this second split, I am 15 minutes and 43 seconds ahead of my former pace. This is such an outrageous advantage early into the game that no matter what happens from here, I should be getting a better second playthrough time. Okay, for the rival, there are a couple of options. I could teach Mud Slap, which would help me against the Croconaw to lower its accuracy, but then I would have 10 PP and I would have to consistently use that move rather than using Struggle, which does do better damage. In this case, I am just using the Struggle strategy. I think this is a choice. I could have tested it more rigorously, but in the end, the Croconaw is just not very good. In this case, it actually does what it needs to do, which is spamming Water Gun, but it is not guaranteed to do that, as you can see with my second battle against it. In this case, it uses Rage against Shuckle, which makes absolutely no sense, giving me an easy win. The place where the Croconaw is actually a major upgrade over the former playthrough is in Burned Tower. Here it still only knows Water Gun, but Shuckle has a bunch of other problems in this fight that it has to manage. Haunter can use Curse, Magnemite can use Sonic Boom, it can also use Supersonic, and the Zubat can confuse me with both Supersonic or Confuse Ray. Usually I'm losing this fight because of status conditions, and then the Croconaw doing decent damage with Water Gun. I had a ridiculous number of resets here. I do think I got quite unlucky. Eventually I teach Mud Slap just because I thought it would be a little bit more consistent to lower the Haunter's accuracy before proceeding with the remainder of the fight. Plus then I have 4 times damage against the Magnemite and I don't have to use Rollout there. I finished the rival off with 13 faults in total, but I'm still 14 minutes and 52 seconds ahead of my former time. Now, for the sake of brevity, I am not going to go through every single fault from here on out. There are a bunch of inconsistencies. Trainers like Morty can always beat Shuckle, but it doesn't need to do optional training, and it doesn't really gain an advantage from training more. You're never going to outspeed one of his Pokemon, so why would you level up? The fastest way to play this thing is just luck through pretty much every fight. Now, there are ways to make things significantly easier. So number 1, I'm going to go to Price first. That way I'm going to be a high level for Chuck. Through this section of the game, I have Dig on my moveset, but by the time I reach the fighting type gym, I have taught Rest in the place of Dig. This is so that I can keep Mud Slap on my set. Now, let's just look at the Chuck battle because I want to point out to you how different this one is to the previous attempt. This time, I knock out the Primeape in 4 hits, move on to the Poliwrath, and Rollo does a lot of damage, then Poliwrath misses its attack. It uses Surf after that, and I survive, so I knock out his final Pokemon. I am 14 minutes and 41 seconds ahead of my former time. Now, I'm gonna go and collect all the available rare candies at this point in the run. Then before Jasmine, Shuckle can be level 43. In this case, I trained a little bit more just to get over the next level threshold so that I didn't waste a bunch of experience. This puts my Shuckle at level 44 going up against the Steel type specialist. The major change here is simple. At level 44, I'm gonna outspeed the Magnemites. I can use Mud Slap. It's decent against them while it doesn't 1-hit or 2-hit, but it's unlikely they're gonna status me, and even if they do, it doesn't really matter because I am gonna use Rest against the Steelix at some point. The whole strategy I've put together here is just utilizing the fact that Shuckle is good defensively. I'm gonna lower the Steelix's accuracy, and then eventually it'll miss all of its Iron Tails and Rock Throws, and I can just knock it out using Rollout. This takes a long time. It is possible for me to lose. I have one reset quickly because Steelix lowers my defense as soon as it comes out. But with the Mud Slap strategy, even if it lowers my defense, I still haven't lost, because it could miss over and over again, giving me more time to use Rest. Eventually, on my second attempt, I come through with a win against Jasmine, and this one catapults me forward in terms of an advantage over my first run. I am now 27 minutes and 7 seconds faster. Inside Clair's gym, this cool trainer is the final boss, not Clair, because both of her dragons have Dragon Rage. Again, she's randomizing her move selection, so she's not always choosing it, but when she does, I lose. Now you might be worried about the rival before the league. He has a Feraligatr by this point. Please look at its moveset, Rage, Water Gun, Scary Face, and Slash, and then look at how much damage it does with its same type attack bonus, Water Gun. Almost nothing. This thing is absolutely terrible. Now, to make this fight a little bit easier on Shuckle, I do have Earthquake instead of Defense Curl. This is to give Shuckle an advantage against the Magneton and the Haunter. That way I don't have to be relying on Rollout in order to knock both of them out. This moveset comes back to bite me a little bit. I had sort of forgotten about Defense Curl at this point when I was fighting Bruno. Here, it is brutal without Defense Curl. The Machamp does so much damage. Setting up defense on the Hitmontop is far superior over trying to beat him with this current strategy. I forgot defense curl way too long, attempting this fight multiple times, and I definitely drop a significant portion of my advantage here. I come out of the Bruno split 31 minutes and 9 seconds ahead, but after Koga, I was 37 minutes and 12 seconds ahead. So I really should have upgraded to defense curl right after beating the rival. That is the correct play for Shuckle. Despite my mistake, I'm going to keep going because I'm 2 hours into this, and it's still looking very promising. Against Sabrina, I have one reset because I get my accuracy dropped. This can always happen because Espeon is much faster. Sometimes in these playthroughs, when I do my second run, a trainer that I didn't think would be that difficult ends up being much more difficult. In this case, it's Misty. Last time I squeezed through on 3 hit points, but I didn't think much of her. She's usually not that difficult, and I figured with some decent luck, Shuckle would be able to defeat her. But I take multiple resets here because her Pokemon deal a lot of damage, and the Starmie can mess me up by using Confuse Ray. If I was going to come back into a third run with Shuckle, the way I would configure things here is I would face Misty last, after Blue, which is possible, and after I use 4 more rare candies to ensure that I have the highest possible level. Optional training for this fight just, again, doesn't make sense. We don't need it. I end up skipping her and coming back later after I defeat Blue, because he is much easier than Misty, but I can make him a little bit easier by using Curse by this point in the playthrough. With all of that out of the way, now let's talk about Red. This strategy is slightly counterintuitive. Setting up fully with Curse will not always ensure that you one-shot the Blastoise, because if you one-shot the Pikachu, then you have a worse turn of rollout on the second Pokemon. I figured out I was going to one-shot the Pikachu if I had +5 or +6 attack, so if I go in at +4, then I should be able to two-shot the Pikachu and one-shot the Blastoise with my third turn of rollout. That said, this strategy is not strictly required. The reason that I'm going to go for it is if I feel like I don't want to spend more time against the Pikachu. The reason I would do this is if it's using too many charms and depleting my PP of Curse. If it isn't, I'm just going to set up to +6 and one-shot, because the Blastoise can still go for Whirlpool or it can use Rain Dance. It's not always going to do a lot of damage. And from there, later in the fight, there are multiple opportunities to use Rest and Heal. Snorlax, Venusaur, Espeon is one Pokemon I don't really want to rest against because Psychic can lower my special defense, but the Charizard is also an option. In this case, I heal up on the Venusaur. I can stall it out because it only has 10 uses of Solar Beam and Giga Drain. Eventually, Rollout knocks it out easily, one hits the Charizard and the final Espeon. In my second run with Shuckle, I get a time of 2 hours, 25 minutes, and 21 seconds, with 36 faults consisting of 35 resets and 1 blackout. It finished the game at level 70 with a game time of 8 hours and 7 minutes. This second run was 29 minutes and 54 seconds faster than my first run. This is a major improvement. That said, with slightly better play against Bruno and Misty, I think I could shave off 8 to 10 minutes from this time. And with better luck throughout the entire run, it might be possible to get a sub 2 hour run using Shuckle. That said, I am satisfied with ranking it based on this second playthrough result. Now, hilariously, Shuckle is not the second last Pokemon. I kind of expected it to be all the way at the end of the Bruno tier, but today it earns itself a placement ahead of Tyrogue, Pineco, Misdreavus, and Yanma. Pichu's time of 2 hours, 23 minutes, and 57 seconds is only slightly faster, and Abra only slightly beat Pichu. Wooper, on the other hand, or in this case, No Hands, dramatically beat Abra, Pichu, and Shuckle. So today, the Bug Rock type earned itself a placement in the Bruno tier, near the end of the tier list, but overall, I think this is a very good performance from this weird gimmicky Pokemon. To me, it feels very similar to Smeargle, which at some point in the future I will need to do a rerun of in Pokemon Crystal. Both it and Shuckle are Pokemon with terrible base stats for a solo challenge, but they end up outperforming what my initial expectation of both of them was. Okay, now, what Gimmickmon should I do next? Maybe Wobbuffet. Maybe it'll be better than we expect, although I don't think so. Thanks for supporting me through YouTube memberships or on Patreon, it really means the world to me. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.